Welcome to Art History class, lesson 1. Today we're gonna talk about art historian. Okay, our first topic for this semester. So, what is art historian? Okay, and what does an art historian do? Okay, art historian is actually a group of people who study, discuss, and restore art for a living. They will use research, either their own or someone else's, to preserve old artwork, fix damaged pieces, or catalog art for a museum show. So there are different direction you can take. Okay, there are different direction you can take as an art historian. So basically, that is a general understanding about who is art historian. But usually, they would always document an artifacts whenever they discover it. So usually we would check for the age of the artifacts. So how old is it, and the style of the artifacts. It can be very similar to the original style, and it can be the style is very much different from some timeline to another timeline. And the subject, okay, later we'll talk about this, and who made it, the artist, and who paid for it. Normally people who commission the artist to work for them. Okay, so this is in a modern terms. We don't know during the prehistoric period who paid for them. So how old is it usually would be based on some uh, you know uh, chronology of work of study based on date. So sometimes people, when they discover it, they will know how to put the timeline based on the date of the discovery and the actual artifact itself. And then physical evidence, later we'll talk about this further. So documentary evidence, visual evidence, and stylistic evidence. Right? So when you talk about art historians' work, so usually when they determine how old is the artifacts is based on radiometric dating. There are two types that people normally use: radiometric or carbon dating. You know, uh, so all of these methods of tracking back the age of the artifacts normally would have the accuracy might be as much as 60 years. So which is quite accurate lah, right? So you imagine how they what they call identify these artifacts in the Lubang Jeriji Saleh in East Kalimantan. This is a cave painting. It is estimated to be like 40,000 years old. Wow, 40,000. So the known earliest artifact would be the Paleolithic period, which is a Stone Age. So this is the first time people discover art, created by human being. Obviously, human create this, right? In some part of the cave painting, they even what they call do their own hand mark painting. So it is very obvious that this is being done by human, right? So another physical evidence about the material used would be this is the two artifacts. It is made by ivory, this Venus of Holyfield, whereby this Venus of Willendorf, it is made from rock, carved rock. Okay, if you look at it closely, they are quite detailed in their work. So this is dated to like 30,000 years ago. Alright, these artifacts, it probably shows that 30,000 years ago people are very fat. Alright, uh, so the style normally would the art historian usually would look at when they discover an artifact or an art piece. So if it's the style is normally based on the period style. Period style means at that particular time where it become very popular, okay, and then everybody start to use that style. So this is what we call period style. Alright, so this is an Art Nouveau piece, a clock. So this is using all the biomorphic, and we also call this a whiplash. Alright, during Art Nouveau. And this is the this style period just after the Bauhaus school of Bauhaus in Germany, and this is a depiction from painting of Piet Mondrian. Okay, so this is what we call the D style. This is a totally different style at that time, so very experimental, and everybody was quite eager to come up with you know something different. So original style means at that time, like for instance, like this clock is actually Art Nouveau. Normally it centered around European country like France. France is very famous for what they call the trendsetter of this style. Okay. A personal style is a bit different. Personal style normally would go for an artist, and mostly fine arts, okay, because they a bit a bit different, because they always want to have their own uh, yeah, personal touch to art, right? So if you can see like this art is very abstract, so this is what we call an abstract art, because abstract means that we cannot uh, define basically what this shape supposed to be, right? So sometimes people look at it in a different context. They would say, oh, it resembles something that look their grandmother's face or whatever. So but there's no motive, no subject, and then let the viewer decide. So this is what we call abstract. Another one is narrative. Narrative normally would tell a story. It's very clear that you can see now the two dead people in a coffin, and there's three people here who are bringing flowers, and they did not look like they are very angry. I mean, like very sad. They look very nasty looking people. So it tells a lot of stories about this art. Okay, this is what we call narrative art, right? So this is another style, which is actually expressionism. Also start in Europe, and it's span across Belgium and Germany. So this is Edvard Munch, the artist who come up with this painting. We call it the Scream. So the Scream is very famous at that time. And this is another method, but this is not expressionism, but this is surrealism. Surrealism is it's a trend, because those days people are beginning to learn about psychoanalysis, how people go crazy, and the drug LSD that induce your imagination. So that's why people becoming more imaginative, and they come up with some weird kind of like surreal. That's why the idea of surrealism come into picture during this period. Sorry. So in terms of architecture, so we can also learn certain style here. So this is what we call the Norman style. It's actually adopted by the European, and this has got nothing to do with Roman style. Yeah, of course it is also called Romanesque in the beginning, but it is I would classify it as a regional style, and then it become expand in Europe, and then it almost all cathedral have the same concept of what they call arch with curve arch here, you know. It's just that some of them, this is the old style, which is they use post and lintel, whereby this one have an arch. That's the difference, European and certain part. So this is in Canterbury Cathedral in UK. I'm not really sure where this is from, but that's the style. It's still Norman style of Europe. Okay, religious subject normally are very popular uh, during the Renaissance period. You know why? It's because the church take over. You know, after the fall of Roman Empire, the Christian Roman Empire, the church takes over the administration, basically, because nothing else works anymore, and that is the reason why most of the commission work are from the church. So they would pay Leonardo da Vinci's and a lot of other artists. You know, actually, it's more towards the spreading of Catholicism. Alright, like this slide. What I'm gonna show you next. So this is actually Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Okay, if you want to know further what is the meaning of the Last Supper, I'd have to explain to you. You can Google. But it's actually a narrative style of painting. So it tells a story. Okay. So this painting is actually a frescoes. A frescoes means a wall painting in one of the small church or cathedral in Milan, Italy. Okay. So it is always under restoration because they are using a very primitive mixture of colors. So that's why it always flaky, and people have to restore it all the time. So this is very famous painting. It is also have shown the mastery use of perspective. Alright, so this is Leonardo's. So this is a historical. Historical means it shows, it depict certain event, a milestone in certain countries. So this is actually sorry. So this is actually Eugene Delacroix. Eugene Delacroix is a famous artist at that time. Alright, so this is The Liberty Leading the People, the name of this painting. So it's about a French Revolution, during King Louis. That the revolution started, and they managed to overthrow the monarch. And they also invent the word, the device we call guillotine. Guillotine is what people use to chop or decapitate the criminal's head. So in this case, the monarch are the criminals, so most of them are all being executed during this famous French Revolution. Alright, so that is historical. So genre will be daily life. As you can see, this is Bertha Morisot painting. Bertha Morisot is an American, also an impressionist, but she did not really have explored much colors compared to the impressionists, but they exist at the same time of the impressionism. But the concept of daily life is very much impressionism, because those days people, when they paint, they always have to pose. But daily life means that you can do it like candid, like this candid shot. Alright, I hope yeah. And this is another this is just a poster. This is a modern type of poster, so it can be a rock artist, right? Rock star, okay. So this is mythical, mythical, mythological. Mythological means that it is a fictional character and it is not based on reality or the truth. That's why it said mythological. Right? In mythological art, as this one is, I just want to give you this example. This is the famous La Primavera, the spring in Italy. Alright, it was painted by Sandro Botticelli, one of the early Renaissance painter. So this is actually a deity. They are already Christian at that time, but they use a Greek mythology. Like this is Venus. This is Venus. This is Chloris. The Chloris have two characters here. The same girl. Once she was raped by Zephyrus, and then she turned into nature, turned into a deity. So this is like before and after. Right? So there's a Cupid here, which is not a Christian. This is a Greek mythology. Alright? And we have the three graces here, which is very much into Greek mythology. You must understand this painting is significant at that time because the Christians control the church. They don't want anybody to deviate the teaching of the Christianity at that time. So this is for them a sin because people are still using Greek deities and goddesses and so on. So yeah, that is what mythological is all about. Later when we come towards Renaissance, I will tell you more about the story of La Primavera. Okay. So the next slide is what is the subject. The subject can be figurative. When you talk about figurative, you must have a human form figure. So this is abstract figurative. When you can see it is being splashed with different form, but you can still see the shape of human, so that's why we call it abstract figurative. Okay, abstract figurative. So this is a landscape, obviously, but it's just that the technique of the brush can be a bit different. They use a lot of visible dash of brush and strokes, but it is still what we call landscape, no matter what technique or what style they use. So this is still life. Still life can be a bowl, something like fruits and so on, and people start to come up with as realistic as possible using certain light to give to accentuate the contrast and so on. Right, we will talk further. So this is subject, and same like what we talked about just now. This is the Eugene Delacroix. The subject is historical. So this is the subject is this painting is from one of the abstract expression artists, Mark Rothko. I almost forgot. Mark Rothko is the painter for this painting. It's very famous painting. It is only use colors. There's no form, no nothing. It's just colors. So this is the technique of a splashing technique. So this is abstract expression. This is what we Jackson Pollock. Jackson Pollock is the painter that always practice these methods of dribbling and splashing technique. And this is pop artist. This is Andy Warhol painting. Alright, normally he would print this. This is a print version. Alright, so like they have a multiple Marilyn Monroe face with different color coordination. Alright, so and then he can reproduce it over and over again. So that is pop art, right? Now we come to an iconography. When we talk about iconography, is also actually is an art, right? But this is where you would see, paintings of Jesus Christ. If you're a Christian, you will probably go to their home, your home. You will see that they put Jesus Christ painting. And if you go to a Muslim house, you will find they put this calligraphy. You know, this is what we call iconography, because you feel that you feel more protected if you have um, religious, paintings and calligraphy. You feel that you always feel protected, like God is always with you, this kind of thing. So this is another one which I would also classify it as iconography. So if you go to the government office, you would find this what they call poster of our king, right? And the queen, side by side, and then sometimes you have the minister and the wife next to it. So this is an iconography. Is the man for the iconography is nothing but to brainwash you to believe that these people, they are great. So that's why it is called iconography, right? So this is a tradition of the Byzantine, which is a Roman Christian. They are the one who would decorate their churches with even the emperor's portraiture, right? So, well, that's iconography. The topic that we're going to talk about now is mainly the idea of composition in general. Okay, so these are all the topics in composition, general composition. So you must have all this. I don't have to explain. Maybe I explain you in the next slide. So form and composition means here is refer to the object shape and structure in 2D, like figure painting in 3D. So you must know how to identify, this basic what they call 2D and 3D. And then composition refer to how the artist organize and compose form in the artwork. So the 7 elements of art are line, shape, space, value, form, texture, and color. So these elements are the building block of the ingredient of art. So this is also what we normally would call an element of design or element of art. And we also have principle of design or principle of arts in this case. The principle of a visual design include contrast, balance, emphasis, movement, proportion, hierarchy, repetition, rhythm, pattern, unity, and variety. So these principles of the design works together to create something that is aesthetically pleasing and optimizes the user experience. So the principles, okay? This you will learn this in your 2D 3D class. The element of design and the principle of design, okay, which is quite similar to our general understanding in art history. So what sort of material that art historian would check? So these are the normal material that we would discover, like pigment. What sort of pigment they use? Pigment means the coloring. And clay, is it you use clay or carved? Marble normally they are carved out, to make statues and so on. And gold normally is it's it's also significant sort of metal. And the new media and tools. So the process artists employ, such as an applying paint to the canvas with a brush and the distinctive personal style, personal ways they handle material constitute their technique. Alright, so the style of the process of how the artist apply brush on the canvas. So this is also part of the study. And then form, material, and technique interrelated and are centralized, are central to analyzing any work of art. Okay, I can explain to you much further. So that this is the famous Jackson Pollock, the one that I mentioned earlier, the one that used dribble and splashing. So he's an American painter, right? So this is how he explore his inner self through the work of art. Right? Normally his painting is huge, like 4 by 8 feet, sometimes 10 feet. So he would normally work like this. He would splash it. He would be on the canvas. So normally he would not have to use canvas. He would use plywood to make art. And he's painting now for this kind of art that he are producing. As you can see, it probably costs 140 million now. Alright, average. Wow. So that is Jackson Pollock. So line is an element of defining the work, shape or form. Contour line is a continuous line that's defined an object and outer shape. So this is like Albert Dürer, the four horsemen on for the apocalypse. So these are all using lines. As you can see, it create contours, like the shape. If you like do it a repetitive lines here, you can see it will follow the shape of the object. Alright. So and then colors. Okay, light reveals all color. This is, as you can I don't know whether you already have taken your color study class or not, but this is okay. Never mind. I just go recap back to you. Primary colors means 3 colors. Secondary colors means the one in between all these 3 colors. Tertiary means the 2 in between each. And color schemes. Color scheme is either complementary color, split complementary color, tertiary color, tetradic, or analogous. Okay, you will learn that in your color studies class. Okay. So texture is a quality of a surface that light reveals. So this is what texture is in an artistic form. So it's actually, texture is what we can also understand is like the tactile texture. That means the surface itself, whether it's coarse, whether it has the rip or whatever. So the feeling of texture can also be described in 2-dimensional. So this is what we call 2D texture. Right? So people normally would define texture in this way, right? And then this is Yayoi Kusama installation. They call it infinity room. So sometimes artists explore the use of space. So if you walk into this chamber of this infinity room, you would see like you are in a what 360 degrees angle of space and infinity. Alright, so this is an installation work. Okay, Yayoi Kusama is very famous. So if you Google, you would find Yayoi Kusama. Alright, we will also talk about this artist when we proceed later on in a few weeks of class. So perspective is, this is Raphael School of Athens. So they use a lot of perspective. Alright, so this is what we call one point perspective. Foreshortening is something that protrusion of your hand, like going towards the viewer. Alright, so this is Caravaggio foreshortening. As you can see, foreshortening means that it goes to the viewer, like that. So everything looks short, but it's actually long. So that's why it's called foreshortening. So I have created a lot of other artwork on my personal work as well. So maybe I can share it with you one of these days about how I use foreshortening. Alright. So this is carving. We talk about carving. They are always like this. This is what we call chip forming. Chip forming, that you have to chip it out from a block. Right? So this is what we call carving. Casting is like this. Normally people create a duplication using mold. So they normally would use cast material. Usually they will use bronze. Alright, so these are very tedious process. Only specialized people can do bronze casting. Alright, so this is what we call a relief sculpture. Relief sculpture is actually partly embossed, like an embossed shape of decoration. So normally it is very famous. It is decorated during the Roman Empire, where they commemorate the victory through this what they call carving of a war relief of their victory. Alright, so it is narrative in a way. It tells about, yeah, military powers. That's, yeah, right. So lastly, architectural drawing. This is where as an art historian, when they were to check the authenticity of the artifacts, in this case architecture for instance, obviously you must have the designer's artwork. So the designer's artwork normally is this blueprint. Sometimes it has a set of written dates and so on in these tablets. Alright, so that is how art historian check their records. Okay guys, uh, yeah, that's all for today.